This is Lisa Miller and Associates, Florida Insurance Roundup, your podcast on the people, issues, and regulations shaping Florida's insurance market. Now, here's Lisa Miller.
Welcome, friends. I reflected recently on the many calls that I receive from insurance agents on a daily basis. Much of my telephone time is spent listening to agents tell me stories of their worries about the market or when the next shoe's going to drop in our crazy insurance market. Thinking about those calls and discussions, it's no wonder, since automobile, homeowners, and commercial insurance premiums are at an all-time high, despite some easing of rates due to a kick-in at policy renewal this summer, we're seeing some signals of hope. But remember this, rates are driven by four factors. Catastrophic weather, we cannot stop Mother Nature. We have inflation that's driving them. We've got no control over either of these things. And then we have litigation, which we all know so much about. Those of you who have followed our work have heard us talk about it over and over again. And lastly, the cost of reinsurance, which are starting to ease somewhat, but a recent story that came out we'll talk about in a bit may have even changed that. But all of us know that we are one bad hurricane away from higher reinsurance costs, and many of us are holding our breath to see what's going to happen the rest of this hurricane season. As many of you who know, listening to our podcast, reinsurance is insurance for insurance companies, and they have to have it by law, and it pays for the huge catastrophic claims that occur when the wind blows. So what better way to get to the heart of these issues than to talk to some of the men and women who every single day are on the front lines talking to customers about what's going on in the market and what's best for them and their own personal situations for the coverage that they need. These agents are working with over 7 million property insurance policies here in our state, and they deserve a salute of gratitude. Perhaps you can tell that I'm doing this program while I'm on the road, away from the studio, but I think you'll enjoy today's show. So with that, I want to introduce the three shining stars and great friends of mine who will be joining us today and talking through what's up in the Florida insurance market on today's Florida Insurance Roundup podcast. First, Jay Wolfberg, president of We Insure, a Sunrise, Florida-based agency chain that includes We Travel and We Pet insurance services. They have over 195 offices across 35 states and 700 people on their team handling customers every day. Jay is an accomplished agent in his own right, having a background of more than 10 years in commercial and residential property. Jay, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And next, Anna Regina Mira, who has been on our show before. She is from her beautiful headquarters with her company called American Insurance Point, AIP as we call it. It has home, auto, life. She has several thousand customers, many of which are international citizens. She's a native of Brazil. She cut her teeth working for Allstate and now has several employees and has grown her company one at a time. Welcome, Anna Regina.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, dear. And certainly we have our third guest, Paul Lalonde, president of Insurance Wagon. They're in Jacksonville, formerly called Indy Financial. He provides individual and commercial protection across Florida, and he's a seasoned agent starting his career with Kemper Insurance and has been an independent agent for more than 15 years. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Glad to be here, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
So if you think about it, we have representation from South Florida, from Central Florida, and from North Florida. And we hope that today you'll enjoy the perspectives each bring to the Florida Insurance Roundup. We're going to get started with the good news. All of you listening to this podcast have been seeing and reading about the encouraging news of our homeowners insurance industry. The insurance commissioner spoke recently and said that 12 companies have asked for rate decreases and 25 have asked for no change in their rate status. We know that Citizens Property Insurance Policy has asked for a rate increase. And though that may not sound like an encouraging sign of improvement, when Citizens rates go up, it's good for the market because it means that the private market doesn't have to compete with the government's insurance company. And in fact, American Integrity Insurance Company has announced an almost 7% rate decrease for about 55,000 of their policyholders, and many other companies are making similar announcements. So I ask our agent force on today's call, starting with Paul, what are you seeing in your area of the world in terms of when the quotes are going out the door? Are they less than they were at this time last year?
Many are, Lisa, but not really as much as we would have hoped by now. I can share a personal story where we use specific type of software that helps us manage our clients and their renewals. And for probably 2.5 to 3 years, there was this little red mark that showed signs of rates increasing every renewal. Well, for the past month and a half or so, we're watching those pages of green renewal markers come by, which means that rates are staying the same or lowering. We're seeing more of it in auto, but I think a couple on the call right now may think that that's a little maybe inflated or optimistic because signs are now showing that a little bit of the auto is coming back up. So we're seeing some home insurance come down, but it looks like the auto is starting to pick up in our world up here in North Florida.
Wow, okay, that's Jacksonville. Over to Orlando. Anna Regina, what are you seeing as you're quoting?
We are very optimistic at the office. What we have seen is that the rates have been stabilized. We are back to that time that whenever we have a rate increase, it's no more than 15%, which is very different from the past 2 years that we have had 400, sometimes 600% rate increase. And the quotes that we are offering right now, especially for our non-renewal book of Progressive, are, if not the same, better than what they paid in 2023. So it's very promising.
Wow. All right, Jay, what do you say from the South Florida perspective, but also the statewide perspective? What are you hearing?
So from the South, I mean, we obviously have the biggest population of citizens policies down in this direction. But I would parrot what Anna said and say it's cautious optimism that things seem to be moving in the right direction. We are absolutely seeing rate decreases with many of our carriers. And we're also seeing a lot more creativity in the policies to customize coverages to fit people's budgets much better.
Speaking of that customization and the flexibility of the coverage, Jay, if you'll continue with that thought, we were seeing a tightening of coverage, a tightening of underwriting guidelines over the past couple of years, where insurance companies would say, we won't write roofs older than 6 years old or whatever the writing guideline is. Are you seeing that better? Are you seeing more creative coverages being offered? I heard the other day that there was a company that was contemplating offering a certain type of high-end bicycle coverage. What are you seeing, Jay?
So yeah, we're definitely seeing more creativity, especially on the roof side, with coverages like stated value. And I think that these companies, from an underwriting perspective, were very cautious because the state was so litigious. And now with a lot of these legislative changes, we are slowly seeing what I would describe as common sense underwriting coming back into the market. So if the risk makes sense, we see a lot of our companies jumping on board to take that risk, where in the past they wouldn't.
And Regina, are you seeing flexibility in coverage, like with liability limits or other features that might have been stricter in the past? It's better now?
Yes, I totally agree with Jay. This is something that I have been advocating for years now, to have something according to what the client can afford and needs. And we see a lot, for example, a limited water damage coverage, because sometimes the client had other claims in the past. So the companies are willing to take certain risks as long as we can adapt the policy to the new reality. And we also see clients looking for less personal coverage or choosing actual cash value instead of the replacement cost. We have also seen the $2,500 deductible that was so high in the past as the new normal. So yes, I totally agree that the companies are offering some type of coverage to adapt to a new reality.
Awesome. Paul, I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit and
Sure.
talk about commercial residential and commercial buildings, because I know you do a good portion of that. We followed the Surfside legislation, the condominium legislation that has been so heavily discussed in the press recently, requiring the milestone inspections, making sure that these condominiums are safe. And, the inspections are due the end of this year. Senate President Pasadomo just announced that she would not hold a special session despite the request for one, to push back that due date based on the fact that it appears there's not enough engineers to get that work done, and the expense involved to have the work done. Now, the discussion among the Citizens Board was quite interesting when they revealed in a mid-July meeting that they had succumbed to political pressure to write more commercial policies that it otherwise wouldn't. I mean, they actually said that at this public meeting, and the board chairman said, we've got condominium associations with 200 and 300 and 400 members that are trying to get the people's attention, and the political pressure starts to put us in the face of having to write more uninsurable buildings. So, Paul, what is the commercial market doing in terms of its recovery, commercial residential and commercial, because you've got so much construction and growth in the North Florida area?
Yeah, and to start off with the negatives and finish positive, we are still facing some issues just in general, finding wind coverage once we get closer to the beach. So we have these high value commercial properties that they may not qualify for a citizen's commercial down the road. But in general, the coverage is very difficult to find at the beach. I couldn't even imagine down in South Florida. But as far as the condo insurance goes specifically, Lisa, just to touch on that, we were seeing large condo premium increases before Surfside collapsed. And now with all the extra regulations that are getting put onto these boards of people that live there, no more than that. Many are still retired. This is what they do. They sit on the boards, and it's pretty difficult to navigate. So let's go ahead and throw in the increased insurance rates. But we did see one condominium complex take about a 50% rate increase about 2 years ago, followed up by almost another 50% rate increase this year. Never mind the ability to find wind insurance. So it is becoming very difficult still. But there are properties. I think we all learn as agents. We know what underwriting companies prefer, what type of properties, and we kind of work with what we have. And that's where we come in as agents.
Exactly right. I know that you have to kind of meet the market where it is. Back to you, Anna Regina. Moving on to auto insurance. Many say that auto insurance is going to be the next crisis now that the property insurance market is settling down, or will be in the next 8 to 12 months. What are you seeing in auto rates? Is it the next major challenge that consumers are going to face? Is it happening right now? It appears, when you read some of the trade press, we are seeing, 20% rate increases since 2023. And you can read Property and Casualty 360. They've got one of the reasons is because every car is a computer. They've all got these computer chips in them. And every time there's damage to one of these cars, you got to have a computer technician to fix them. What are you hearing about, and what are you seeing in the auto insurance arena, Anna Regina?
Lisa, since July, I noticed that there has been a certain stabilization within the auto insurance as well. I would say that the first semester, the prices were going up, and the renewals, we had to reshop most of the clients, what is for us extremely expensive. And last year, it was the same issue, especially with the large carriers. But now the renewals that are coming up since, I would say, August, beginning of August, the rate has been about the same, if not a decrease, what for me was a surprise.
Well, that's encouraging. Jay, what are
Yeah.
you seeing in auto? What are you hearing down there in your part of the world?
I'm going to say down here we are seeing a raise in auto, and I do think it's due to the increase in pricing. And I recently saw a windshield being replaced on a $40,000 car that cost $4,400 to replace the windshield because of the sensors, the automated rain sensors that are in there, and it was, that was a legitimate dealership price. So we definitely see that. I think the hope with auto insurance potentially could lie in technology with the telematics. So if you have an auto insurance company, and most of the big ones offer this program where they can keep track of your driving habits, historically that can have a pretty big impact on your rate, normally in a positive way to the tune of 10 or 20%. So I think that's important to note.
Do you encourage your customers? I'll throw it over to you, Paul. The tracking and the trackers and monitoring of driver habits. Do you find that customers are willing to succumb to that, or do they fight that? What do you hear, Paul?
So I'll just tell you this. When we first started with the whole telematics programs with several carriers, we would present it to our clients, but there was always a fear of that big brother looking over you and looking where you're going at 2:00 in the morning. But those same folks who have had, and me being included, that had a little bit of apprehension about somebody watching my driving habits, there sometimes in cases their hands are being forced. There's large discounts available that these carriers are tacking on the front end. They're almost making it too good to be true. We've been pushing it lately after years of fighting back on it. So now we do see the benefit in the savings. I don't know how it will affect the industry per se in the long run, but I am seeing some serious savings with these telematics programs.
Wow. All right, we'll move on from auto insurance. I want to talk a little bit about reinsurance costs. We talked about it earlier in the program that reinsurance, of course, is insurance for insurance companies, and the estimates are that 40 cents of every dollar that Floridians pay goes to pay for the cost of reinsurance. That's what insurance companies have to collect from us. And then, of course, they pay the reinsurers in Bermuda and London, around the world. And there was a recent article from the Swiss Re executive where he was discussing the fact that the models that they use are showing an increased need for higher rates, that the days of lowering rates are gone. And with the weather getting worse, there's just no reason why rates should go down, basically, and that there needs to be a higher rate to support the cost of reinsurance. And, I've often advocated that Florida's Hurricane Catastrophe Fund, with its tremendous resources and flexibility, should come in and help with some of these expensive private reinsurance costs. Would love your thoughts about that, Paul. I know you follow that somewhat. Do you ever hear people talk about that, or what are your thoughts about the CAT fund kind of taking the place of some private cost?
Well, I'll tell you right now that the amount of people that I've spoken to about reinsurance, consumers are becoming educated. There's a lot more that not only are able to carry a conversation about it, but they're asking questions about it. They want to know the bottom line. And we show them the fees and the surplus lines fees and taxes, but we're not really showing them what's going on behind the scene. I'm just seeing in general, people understand this. They understand also the talk that we've had about fraud. So they're listening. We've had quite the captive audience to listen with all these rate increases. So hopefully, we have some consumers that are starting to be aware of where their insurance costs are coming from.
It would be very helpful. I'll move on from that, and I wanted to talk a little bit about flood insurance and where we're going in that market. Jay, I'll throw it back to you. 4 or 5 years ago, we had so many companies that were interested in Florida attacking an endorsement onto their property policy for flood, and then we've kind of seen that go away. What is the conversation in the marketplace? Are people buying it? Are they walking away from it? We all know they need it because their driver's license says Florida. What are you hearing, Jay?
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I always tell people all of Florida is a flood zone. So
Yeah,
I think that, we are absolutely seeing the home carriers shy away from that endorsement. I think it probably, they felt it left them a little too exposed. We are seeing a pretty solid influx of private flood carriers. We've got some great new technology that enables us to, shop across the entire spectrum of the national flood program, of a variety of private flood programs. So consumers definitely have more options now than ever before. So I'd like to remind all the listeners that all of Florida is a flood zone. And normally people shop for the insurance when an event happens. It's imperative that you shop prior to an event. There's a ton of private flood markets. There's a great national flood program, and definitely worthwhile to investigate those options.
Great advice, Jay. Thank you so much for that. I thought, Anna Regina, with your experience with Hurricane Nicole and what happened in the Orlando area, of your many thousand customers, are they clamoring to buy flood insurance?
What we do here, Lisa, is we offer every client that is purchasing homeowners insurance, we offer the flood. So we do send them, even if it's a tentative quote on the body of the email. But like you said, we use the same thing here. If your property is in Florida, if you have an ID from Florida, you are in a flood zone. If you're in a higher risk or lower risk, that's another conversation. But especially here in Central Florida, people do not see the need as if they are on our coast. However, in 2022, these people were proven wrong because area in Central Florida that were flooded, many of them had never been flooded before. So we highly encourage everybody to buy flood with their homeowners policy.
And Paul, seems like your neck of the woods in Jacksonville has just been spared and spared and spared. What's your flood take up, as they say? Who's buying it in your neck of the woods?
Where we got, I'll use the term, we got a little upended recently with some of the 2.0 rating that I believe a lot of other agents and consumers for that matter have, where this is where they went in and re-rated a lot of the flood prone areas, like for example, St. Augustine Beach, where when they did get this 2.0 rating approved, we had a client that had about a $900 flood policy jump up to $3,600. Now, there are some issues with some of the rate adequacy, I believe, and that's what we're trying to attempt with us. But some of the increased premiums have slowed down flood a little bit, the purchase. But I'll echo the other two agents that it's offered at every chance we get because it is important. Once you see a flood claim, once you see the results from the flood, you definitely want to purchase the insurance.
True words could not have been spoken. Everything you three have said about flood, I will continue to say, and I talk to the media as much as I can. I want to talk about the media as we bring this in for a close. Oftentimes, the reporters that I talk to are very skeptical of the insurance companies that we work with, of insurance agents oftentimes getting the crosshairs. I'm curious what your thoughts are about how we can work with the media, maybe even that I encourage each of you who have such a great presence and can walk into a radio station, I believe, at any time and introduce yourself, see if they would put you on air to talk about insurance. I encourage you to do that. I encourage those who are listening that are insurance experts on this podcast. We've got to do a better job to get the media to be comfortable with what we do and that we are not evil, greedy people trying to steal premiums. So I would love to close with having a discussion about that. Paul, what's your thought about the local media in your area? And do they do you justice, or they crucify y'all pretty badly?
I think it's finally hit home recently. We have seen some more explanatory type of news coverage versus bashing the insurance carriers maybe for being a little too premium hungry. But all in all, I think the people are aware of it now. I think the media is starting to pay attention. And I think all that had to be done was just keep your eyes open driving down I-4 and look at all the lawyer billboards saying so-and-so got me $1.5 million. Well, they also got themselves 30% of that. And just common sense would tell us somebody has to pay for it. And many times it's that insurance company. So you keep on doing that, the rate's going to go up. And I think we're finally all, including the media, falling in and understanding that now.
Well said. Jay, what are your thoughts being down in crazy media, South Florida?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo Paul's point as well. And I think that the media definitely can be a little aggressive towards the carriers. And what we find, or at least my opinion, would be that in the independent agent space, we're on the side of the consumer. We're shopping on behalf of the consumer. We're helping the consumer out. So that's the entire purpose of this industry, is to help the consumer make an educated choice. So I think that the media does recognize that. I've had quite a few good conversations with them and hope that trend does continue.
You do a great job, Jay, when they call you and you take those interviews, and I appreciate you doing that. Anna Regina, I know you too. You've experienced some of the local TVs there. Helped you get some of those interviews, and you do a beautiful job. Close us out here and tell us what your thoughts are about working with them and staying proactive, talking to the media.
Sure. Lisa, I don't know if you remember, but a couple of years ago, I was contacted by one of the major TV channels, and the reporter initially was a little bit more towards to the aggressive side. But as we spoke on the phone, she started to get really, and I was talking about the attorney fees and all the fraud going on and the legislation. She ended up doing a great interview. She even drove to Tallahassee. She interviewed some attorneys. So the segment came up. It was one of the first ones that really showed a broader view of what was going on. So, I always try to do that, not only with the media, but also with our state representatives. I invited both, one Democrat, one Republican, to come to my office and see our daily work and understand what is going on and why they should keep up what they started. Both of them came. And we had a very nice conversation. So every time I can, yes, I do it. And I think that if every agent would engage with at least one media outlet, we would have a different perspective and the public would understand and maybe give less chance to these $900,000 checks. Because at the end of the day, it's our money.
Well said, Anna Regina, and I appreciate your good work as well in this space and working with the media, not running away from the media. And oftentimes insurance agents are what I'll call Switzerland, where you are seen as being the neutral party, both working vociferously for consumers and also making sure that the companies, their claim dollars are not spent more than they should be. Those claims should not be paid more than they are fairly paid. And I think it's awesome that our insurance agents are able to represent both sides in the insurance transaction fairly. So it's just been great to have the three of you on the show. I want to remind our listeners, the distinguished guests that we have today. We've had Jay Wolfberg, president of We Insure. He is just working so hard down in South Florida, across the state and the country with all of his We Insure agents. Appreciate you being on the show and sharing your insight, Jay.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
And Anna Regina, my heart, just always great to hear your voice. And, you are leading the entire team at American Insurance Point in the Orlando area. If any of our listeners go there, she would love to host you in the office. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for all you do. You certainly make a difference in our market.
Oh, thanks so much. And President Paul Lalonde, president of Insurance Wagon over in the Jacksonville area. He has a great team of individuals that are serving customers in that area. Thank you, Paul, for always taking my calls and helping me get things done.
Of course, Lisa. Thank you very much.
As you've heard today, the Florida property insurance market is getting better. It's in some cases we may see a few more months of painful increases or painful costs, but I think that over the next 8 to 10 months, things are going to be better. The number of insurance companies writing new business is growing. Underwriting guidelines are relaxing, and the number of rate increases are shrinking. We have so many good companies in this marketplace, and we've got a ways to go before we get to the point that we can say that the Florida market is healthy or balanced, but I think we can say it's better. We urge you to take away all of this good street intelligence that you've heard today and share it with your colleagues and your local and statewide elected officials. And again, for those of you that are not shy of the media, radio stations are great places for you to go in and introduce yourself as an insurance professional, speak to a producer on the radio shows, and ask to be on the show and do a segment on insurance. It can be interesting and entertaining, believe it or not, and very worthwhile for the insurance industry overall. And this is the most important takeaway from this podcast. Most homeowners, commercial and renters insurance policies do not cover flood damage. Please consider getting flood insurance, whether it's from the federal government or from a private company. Whatever you do, talk to your insurance agent about it. And many of you on this, listening to this podcast, even for insurance professionals yourselves, may not have it. I'm reminding you today, go buy some. In our podcast show notes, we'll have a link to some of the reports we've mentioned, including those from the Office of Insurance Regulation. If you work in the industry or in the field every day, I'd love to hear your perspective on the issues we've discussed. And as always, I want to know how we can make things better. You can call us and leave your comment or question for our later reply on air right here on the Florida Insurance Roundup podcast by dialing 850-388-8002. That's 850-388-8002, or drop me an email, Lisa Miller at lisamillerassociates.com. That's Lisa Miller, all one word, at lisamillerassociates.com. And lastly, please follow us on our social media accounts, including our LinkedIn page, Facebook business page, formerly Twitter, now called X, and be sure to hit like and follow every chance that you can. That's our Florida Insurance Roundup for today. Thank you for being a part of it. And remember, at Lisa Miller and Associates, we have a passion for policy and client success. I'm Lisa Miller. Until next time, stay safe.
This has been Lisa Miller and Associates Florida Insurance Roundup, your podcast on the people, issues, and regulations shaping Florida's insurance market. For more information on today's program, please visit us on the web at www.lisamillerassociates.com.